just doing this video. This video to talk about some stuff. I might do another one if I don't finish this, or by the time it's done and it's over, I realize that I can continue it and finish talking about stuff that I didn't cover because I ran out of time or for whatever other reason. So I'm gonna start. I was just posting stuff on social media and sort of sending individual messages to people about stuff, but that's what I'm doing this video because I decided it might just be faster to just do it that way and do it anyway. I'll still write stuff on social media, and the reason I'm doing this video like this anyway is because the book I'm writing encompasses all that anyway. It's just stuff people are bringing up because I didn't mention it on a social media post on purpose, because you look at it as if it's a trailer to a movie or something, so you are just getting like a preview, and I want most of the material to be exclusive to the book anyway, as much as possible. So that's one reason. Again, whatever your style of book is gonna be, however you feel it should be, I realize that not everyone is in that position. Not everyone is writing a book, so to speak. So not everyone really has the same motivation. When someone says like, oh, I'm gonna keep so-and-so information private for now, or I'll refuse to say so-and-so thing, it's not for really any other reason. Someone might say like, oh, they don't know, they're not familiar with that information, so that's why they're not going to say it, because they don't want to look dumb in front of everyone or something like that. That's not it. I think some people really might be writing a book, so as I've said, that's why I would refuse stuff like that. It's not because you really want to necessarily. It's more so that you can't afford not to, almost. But I'd rather do it that way, just to keep it in the tradition, keep it a little bit more pure. Like this other stuff people are bringing up and mentioning, it's ultimately not that helpful. It's kind of helpful, I guess, as a reminder, but the reason why I said it's not is because they're trying to be helpful on purpose, and it's not so much that they're missing the point, because that would be almost unfair. It would be I would imagine, for most people, kind of difficult for them to have grasped the point. I mean, I hadn't even really mentioned it myself. I hadn't let the point be known, or I didn't really announce what the point is. So that really, I don't think was in too many people's mind when any of that was going on. So I think it would be unlikely for someone to just try and intuit some point upon meeting someone that way or being introduced to them. So I won't hold that against too many people, but that's kind of what was going on. And so again, that's just what social media is. No one even really talks about anything on there anyway. It's all mostly just fans of stuff, trying to interact with other fandoms. Um, and people behind the scenes involved in the productions of whatever art it is. I mean, you could find a lot of local artists on social media, and if they're independent enough, you might even be able to interact with them. But if they're major studio people, or if they have contracts and whatnot, you'll probably just be interacting with not a publicist, but a representative of that entity, that group of people, whatever. So it's not the best medium to even really be doing that anyway. On some other websites or networks where I've tried to start discussion or participate in intellectual stimulation, either through discussion or jotting down random thoughts or notes here and there. It didn't really work either. I mean, I usually say like it takes two to tango. So sometimes it would. I mean, sometimes you could get like a decent conversation out of it. But other times, not. I mean, I'm not saying it's anyone else's fault. Like, oh, everyone else is lazy, they don't want to do it, or anything like that. I mean, sometimes it's your fault. Because I've responded to many comments before in the past, but I'm not always in the mood just because of how the day goes. I mean, I'll get ready to start writing comments or responding to something someone messaged me a few weeks ago, but like I'll just get tired. Like I don't feel like doing it right now. Maybe in an hour, like tomorrow or something, tomorrow morning. But I just don't want to run out of time doing stuff. Something like that. So that's what happens some of the time, at least. And so, that's like just one reason why or what have you. So I actually was gonna mainly focus on in this talk is just some social media stuff, because people, like some people, like if you're one of those people, you might know what I'm talking about. But people, I think, just sort of see me as I mean, they must think I'm some kind of journalist or some kind of news presenter, because some of the stuff I used to post on social media was kind of educational. I mean, I grew up reading Carl Sagan and whatnot, so I mean, I can tell you firsthand that my intent with some of the social media posts, I used to focus on posting was, you know, more educational than anything else. I don't know how many of my posts you've seen or what you have read, but it would be like that, you know, in the style of Carl Sagan. But I mostly stopped because it didn't really, you know, do much. It didn't really have the intended effect, really. So I don't anymore. There's no point, and apparently, and you know, I don't want to come off as a hypocrite, and that's related to the whole thing that's been going on anyway. So I'm not saying we'll get to the bottom of it, but we'll talk about a lot of it, for what good that may do. um, so you know, it's kind of like a who done it almost, or like it all started when, you know, people keep like complaining about like my behavior and like what I do, as if they like know me, which they don't, or they like know what's going on in my head, so they like to kind of spy or just like pay a lot of attention. You know, so I'll wake up in the morning, I'll take a piss, and then it feels like I'm being watched or listened to, so like, I can't take a piss in peace, for example. You know, so it's all just people, you know, they're like, oh, I know what's going on in his head, or, you know. So it's kind of like what I talked about in the last video. It's like, oh, why did he do this? Why did he do that? You know, like, I don't, you know, and someone's gonna say that they do, just because it's the opposite of not doing it, which is something I'm gonna say soon. But for example, let's just say like I don't do that. Like, initially I don't care too much about what people do or don't do. It's not an excuse, it's just what someone is doing. And so because I said that, a bunch of people are going to say that they do the opposite, which is like spying on people. I think it's not people watching. In the past, it used to be people watching, like, oh, I'm, you know, sophisticated and I'm smart. I'm gonna people watch as a hobby, you know, but that doesn't. I can't do that too much anymore because everyone's doing it, so it doesn't make sense. Like, I'll try, like, I'll even yesterday I was like, oh, I'll see if I can people watch again. So I'll go outside, and then you can't do it. Like, there's just too many people. They're like waiting for me, almost. So they're the ones people watching. I can't people watch anymore because they just watch me. You can't, like, I'd have to put on a disguise to do it, which is not that practical at the moment. So I just don't people watch anymore. It's pointless. You can't do it. So, well, I can't anyway. I mean, I think other people might be able to. So the only thing I do about that is I just be observant. And so it's like, yeah, it is basically the whole Sherlock Holmes thing. I read them when I was a teenager. I've always been into reading, so I think it's largely that. Excuse me. I didn't initially really do too much with the Sherlock Holmes stuff when I read it, if that makes sense. I might actually say never mind and reword that, because someone's going to interpret it the wrong way, but I didn't have to, read it, if that makes sense, for school or anything. I read it because I wanted to. Um, it was like in 2011. It was after I got my first job. Um, and so I remember because when I got paid, I got that paycheck or whatever. I mean, I saved most of it. Whenever I would get paid, that's what I would do. That's what my parent guardians taught to do, sort of instructed. Um, so I remember at that job we'd get paid weekly. I know most jobs pay people bi-weekly, so it's like, oh, we get paid every 2 weeks or whatever. At that job we got paid weekly. It's neither here nor there. There are pros and cons to both models. I would imagine most places do it that way. That was the only job I've worked that really did it that way. And so I used to just pick up the checks, but then, you know, this one coworker in particular who got fired eventually. I mean, he kept boasting about direct deposit. So I was like, man, it's cool. My bank's not that far away. I could just do it that way. I have to go to the bank occasionally anyway to make, withdrawal or something. Like I'll go to an ATM and withdraw like $20 or something. It was no big deal. One of the tellers at the bank I went to was kind of, I'm not gonna say she was like kind of cute, but it seemed like she kept kind of being flirty with me whenever I went in there. So that was another reason I would go. She didn't give me her number or anything, but she gave me her card. And then I guess I was like, oh, call her. I looked her up like once because her name was on it on Facebook and whatever. But shortly after that, I got direct deposit, and shortly after that, like a year later, I think I got fired. So I stopped going to that bank anyway. I never saw her again, never talked to her again. And she had a boyfriend already, but I was thinking I could try to talk to her somehow. So that was the goal. And so in the story, after I got that particular check, I remember saving most of it. I'd save like $100, $200. And then I was living with my parents, so I wasn't paying rent or anything like that. I didn't have to buy groceries. I mean, every now and then I'd get some fast food or something before coming home from wherever, but I wouldn't really get groceries because I lived with my parents, so I'd be doing that, and then I'd use the rest on gas because I would drive to work. But what I did is it was in that Arden area, so I went to the mall, and then I went to the Barnes and Nobles, and then I bought my copy of Sherlock Holmes, Barnes and Noble edition, right here, for $7, $7.95. Higher in Canada. slightly. I did that. I mean, I just got this one, volume 1, and I got volume 2 later, paperback. I have another edition with Sidney Paget's original illustrations in it, which I saw before reading them. And so, around the same time, I was also reading Philip K. Dick stuff because I was into sci-fi. So that happened around then. And then I eagerly anticipated getting more literature. So it wasn't just stuff I remembered reading in school or anything. Like, I'd recently had to read Jane Eyre. Excuse me, because I took this English writing class during summer school. And we had to read that. So, Philip K. Dick was American, so I wanted, it was like, how are we going to do this? I wanted more English United Kingdom stuff. So Sherlock Holmes is actually one of the earliest. I'm not saying it's the earliest, but it's, one of the earliest Victorian era pieces of literature. As a series, some stuff is before it, but when you look at it like that, it's all like pre-Victorian stuff. And then like French and German stuff. The first Sherlock Holmes story having been published in 1887. The Edwardian era started 1910. The last Sherlock Holmes story and collection by Doyle was published 1927, and Bulldog Drummond was coming out in the 20s. So 007 started in the 50s. And so if you go all the way back to Sherlock Holmes again in the late 19th century, 1887, it's all like Dickens, who I believe was a supporter of Doyle and Bell. So it's stuff like that. The point of reference I'm using is medieval stuff. So some of the Bible books were written around 40 or 50 AD. Like Julius Caesar was like 50 BC. So Rome fell around then. Julius Caesar died around like 49 BC. And so for example, Gawain and the Green Knight is typically attributed to the year 1400. I mean 1300 because of the 14th century. So that's not really that long ago. We've had society and civilization for thousands of years. Really that's only 700 years ago. Um, of course, that's one of the later Arthurian stories. It's kind of an epic, a legend, usually called Arthurian legends or Arthurian epics. So, I mean, that's the point I'm getting to. Some of the first Arthurian based stories came out around the year 600 or 454 AD. It's not just the history of the kings of Britain or anything. Or any of the story versions. Point is, some of them are just sort of embellished stories based on fact or whatever, or metaphorical stuff. That's not so much the topic of this discussion, which my book does focus on. So, excuse me. I've typically been leaving some of the specifics for that. Because it could sound interesting to talk about. Sometimes, maybe even kind of awkward, depending on what you're actually talking about. Some of the information seems kind of more natural to read or write if you want to communicate it. Whereas just orally speaking about it kind of is an indicator on what you're really trying to do. So it's something I've always been into. I know recently because of me and because of what I decided to share with other people about it, kind of turned into a fad of some sort, or more so like a trend. So people are trying to just do that, which just means they like white people, right? Because, that's one reason why I started reading English literature, such as Shakespeare, so I could fit more in with the white people and possibly impress the white women with how well read I was on that, considering that I assumed that this stuff was sort of a history lesson on those people, or a look at history either way. Records of those people. So, if I were talking to a white girl, she would say something like, "Oh, I'm impressed by how much you know about our people," or something like that. that was the plan. Sometimes plans don't always work out as well as how they're visualized in your head, or what your idea might be. Um, uh, so that's part of it. Um, so yeah. Well, no. So they kind of are like the Jesus myths, I guess, because like Osiris or Horus, they're archetypes that pop up around the world around the same time. So it's sometimes said Horus, the sun god, is same as Christianity's Jesus. Or like Santa Claus may have been Jesus, or the Easter Bunny may have been Jesus, or the Amanita muscaria fly agaric fungus may have been Jesus, or King Arthur may have been Jesus, stuff like that. Some of the popular translations or versions we have of Arthurian epics are translations of German or French versions, which are translations of English versions. So, um, like they're white too. So some of it might be like, oh, we're trying to learn more about the French people. We're trying to learn more about the Germans. Um, it's sometimes said that Britain started as a land invaded by the Normans, who are from northern France. So, you know, that's the Celtic land. That's where they came from, and it was constantly invaded by those people, the Saxons and Normans and some French people. So that all became who inhabited that land. They moved north, they moved west. Uh, that became Scotland, that became Ireland. Um, and from there, it's typically thought they went to the New World in the Americas to start the USA. That was after Germany. Um, so you can see how the interest usually shifts between Germany and France. Like at one moment it's, oh, Germany is so cool. They have all the art. They're smart. They're better. Their language is better. And then the next minute it's France. Like, oh, France is the best. I know French. I want to go to France. Their language is the best. they're smart, they have the best art, you know. Um, it's usually stuff like that. And then it's like, oh, Americans are dumb, Americans are stupid, fat, whatever, you know. I've seen the truth for what it is. Um, you know, some of it they say, like, oh, don't worry about things outside of your control or whatnot. It's not that. Um, you can't really do some stuff. I mean, I guess just you can't just like decide to really do it. Um, so you know, it's like, oh, what if there's a girl you're trying to impress or talk to? You know, it's like it's in some people's control, I guess, but you know, it's not. You can't just always, like, from my experience, like, can't just like talk to a broad and hope it works. You know, like it's not always in your control, so to speak. Um, they'll just uh, you know, deny you or refuse your offers or anything like that. So that ties into the mood thing. Like, not everyone is really always in the mood to entertain you. They don't really have to. It's never been a rule or anything. Like, nowhere in the Constitution does it say one neighbor is required to entertain every fancy and whim of his neighbor. Um, so yeah, just to tie it back into that, I'm still going to be I'm still going to be making social media posts, but um, not so much, you know, upon the recommendation of other people, as in random people or people I can't trust, because um, too much stuff was happening when I would do that. And then it would lead to more explanations that I would need to type, and it was just never ending. And it turned out to be stuff that I didn't even really want to do in the first place. Like a picture I didn't even want to post, you know. It's like I'll pose with no shirt and look like an underwear model or something, and like I'll do that picture, and then you know, it's like, you know what, I really don't want to. It's just, you know, it's not because I want to, it's because I have to, or something. You know, apply that to other stuff, anything else. But that wasn't it either. You know, well, that was mostly like save time. Like I said, too much other stuff would happen. You know, it's like I wouldn't even really be thinking about anyone else, or you know, it's not that I had anyone else in mind, but it's just like, I'll post a selfie or I'll post a picture and I'll write a random thought with it, and I'll do it, and then, you know, it wouldn't have the response that I wanted, so it would seem like people weren't impressed or they didn't get the point. You know, it's like, oh, I didn't I didn't get the point. Why did you say that? It wasn't relevant to anything. It was just like a random comment. I couldn't connect it to anything. I couldn't find any hidden meaning in it. So I'd have to stop and go, you know what? Like, I wouldn't read too much into it, is what I'd have to say to them initially, and then I would say it kind of was just a random thought. Anything else was irrelevant to it. It was just something else. Like, no one was really trying to be funny or give advice out. I think maybe it was mostly them trying to be funny, and I guess some people didn't get the joke, or some people didn't laugh at that stimuli. So that, and then, like I said, it would just lead into too much other stuff that I really wasn't trying to do, because I was doing something else. And then I took time out of my schedule to just do that, and it wasn't really the proper platform to really be doing that off of. So I kind of stopped and was just like, I'll do a video. I mean, the other reason is because I'm writing that book, and a lot of the stuff is going to be in there anyway, so I didn't want to just make a social media post with it for free, because I'm planning on selling the book. I get the manuscript, and I'm going to sort of sell that, just to sell print copies and any Kindle editions. Is the idea. If I'm not able to do that, then by golly, I'll just post everything on social media as it were. But since the idea is to produce an actual physical copy of a book, print, paperback, hardcover, magazine, pamphlet, a booklet, I'm aiming at material items similar to that. So the value of all that incredibly diminishes if I just post stuff on social media. So I'm looking at a text, doing like a zine is different if you're going to put a bunch of pictures in it. I'm not talking about a comic book. I was working on one recently that I still want to finish, which is something that I announced on social media like earlier this year, I think. I'm still working on that, but that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm referring to here is the book. I posted a manuscript recently on social media. It's not that. That's a part of it. That's really only 70% done or so. I didn't, want to. If you were following along, you kind of saw that timeline of events. I wanted to post the finished copy, but I kept running out of time. I wasn't able to do it, so I just posted that after adding some stuff. And when I posted it, I realized something was wrong, because I moved everything in the order. Like, I moved all the paragraphs in the right order before I posted it. But when I looked at it, one of the sections was in the wrong order. So I still have to fix that and then add everything else, and then it'll pretty much be done. I'm not planning on posting the manuscript to that complete edition, updated edition. Instead, I want to take that straight to the press and have it printed. So I wouldn't hold your breath waiting to read that one. Um, Instead, I'm hoping to have that one completed in time for that. On the other hand, the other one I'm working on is what I was actually referring to. Um, and then I might just combine them into one book, but it might be kind of difficult format wise. So I'm just doing it that way. Something happened when I was working on it, so that it kind of changed the course of the creative input. But any of these recent things that happened just kind of delayed it. So it's just that it's taking longer than expected. I probably really shouldn't be talking too much about it right now. But that's it. And so another reason why I'm doing these videos is so you can't read it, because I know reading is, I mean, I've always considered it a pleasurable activity. I don't value it lightly so much. I mean, I know people try to devalue it just for whatever reason. They say sports are better, like, oh, you're a nerd, I'd rather be an athlete or something. So that's only part of it. Excuse me. Fucking burp. Yeah, so no more energy drinks. Those don't really help too much, unless you do like one a week. But they've just been making me crash. And so yeah. So when that manuscript is done, you'd be able to read it. But until then, some of the stuff that I could post on social media, I'm just gonna talk about in a video, if that makes sense. Because you're gonna read it anyway when the book is out. So, I just don't feel like posting it on social media for free. So, it's gonna be something like, just say this or just say that. Like the other day, I said Yomi means read in Japanese, because the verb to read is yomu. So to put it in a noun form, you would change it to Yomi. But in Japanese, a lot of words could be pronounced the same if they're written differently, as in if the kanji is different. So, like there are a couple words for hell as well. One is kosen, the other is inpu. But the kanji that they use could also be read yomi. So then that would mean that other extra words for hell or the underworld are yomi. And so yomi is not just to read, or based off of the verb read, which uses a particular kanji. So I left the hell words out of whatever social media post I made, because I was writing a book and it was just going to be in there anyway. But some fag took the liberty of putting into his own hands the delivering of the knowledge that Yomi um, has other kanji, and it's not just the one based off of the verb to read, um, which is something that I was gonna say anyway, but this is all recent stuff. Like, no one really said how rabid nerds on social media are. So I really didn't know how fast that information was gonna get out there just based off of that one post that I made, which no one even responded to or liked or commented on. So, as weird as it sounds, I had to convey the knowledge and idea that I knew that that wasn't the only reading for Yomi in the Japanese language anyway. So I ended up doing that. And then the point is that there's an anime called Babiru Nisei, and the main villain's name is Yomi. Um, if you study Japanese, yomu, the verb to read, is one of the first verbs you learn. And so it's like, oh, you could do something with that. You know, in Japanese, the word for hell is jigoku. So Goku is also a word for hell. It's Jigoku in particular. China is Chugoku. The kanji looks way different, so you still kind of know. So really, Yomi is not the most common word for hell anyway, but it's more like, you only really know it if you looked it up in a dictionary and saw it there anyway. I mean, it's not anything someone's gonna tell you, or you think you like read some book about it and saw it there. Like, most of these fags and losers are not like reading Japanese books on their own. They're barely even literate in English, so why they think they could just like learn another language like that is a little bit beyond me. They didn't go to school, so that's just what I was thinking about anyway. The protagonist, his name is Koichi. Who's a descendant of some alien named Babel. Um, so he's supposed to inherit his superpowers just so they could protect the computer. But there's another descendant who's trying to just destroy the computer and get the powers so he can destroy the world. His name is Yomi, so the bad guy's name is Yomi. That's the only connection that I was really trying to make with that. Previously, I talked about the concept of hell and what Japanese words are included in it. So I was connecting it to that as well. And so, again, I'm a book person, and a lot of people that have been trying to join the scene lately have been, abusing just like quick tidbits of information just so they could look smart. So, that usually in reality translates into something like this. Situations such as this, like I'll say like, oh, have you heard of this book? Have you read this book? Someone will say no. And I'll say, oh, it's pretty good. And then I'll say like, oh, I want to read this book, or I want to read that book, and then they'll say, oh, you haven't read it yet. And I'll say no, that's why I said I want to read it. And then they'll say like, oh, I know someone who read it. And then I'll say, have you read it? And they'll say no, but I know someone who did. It's not the point really. So I've been trying to apply that to a bunch of different stuff. Like, oh, there's a new movie out, let's go see it. And then someone saw it, and they'll say, hey, I saw the new Angelina Jolie movie or something. And I'll say, oh, I haven't seen it yet, I'm gonna see it tomorrow. But they'll say, ha, I'm better than you because I saw it already, and you'll see it tomorrow or something. And it's like, well, I'm gonna see it tomorrow. Like, what's gonna happen then? Like, is one person still better than the other or something? And, say you wake up and you like get breakfast, and then someone ate breakfast, and then you wake up, and then you go in the kitchen, and it's like, hey, I'm gonna eat breakfast, and then your roommate or whoever the fuck is there is like, oh, I ate breakfast already, and then it's like, well, what's your point? And then they're like, I'm better than you because you didn't eat breakfast yet, and I did, so that's something that you want, and think about what it means. It's like, I haven't really been thinking about it that way. I mean, if it's like a book or a movie, same thing, like, oh, I want to read the new Harry Potter book. Oh, I read it already, you did. Like, that's not the point. I'm doing something else with it. Like you don't see me taking all these books that I read and that you clearly have not, and then like rubbing that in your face, like, oh, I read this and you haven't. Like, I don't do that. But whenever I say that there's a book I want to read, or like, a cheeseburger I want to eat, like McDonald's has a new limited edition, limited time only cheeseburger, and I haven't eaten it yet because I haven't went to McDonald's yet, and then someone did. Like there's some fat fuck who's like, oh, I ate the new McDonald's burger, and it's like, oh, I'm gonna eat one tomorrow. They're like, oh, I'm better than you because I ate it already. I mean, you have to do everything at the same time. Like, it doesn't make sense. Because that's denying individuality. It's communism. People are trying to say everyone's the same. It doesn't make sense. Like, I realized that there's a new generation. Like, when I was a kid in, like, 6th grade growing up, we read about communism and that communists were bad, and that, United States was in a war, Cold War with Russia and whatnot. So you do that today, like some of these kids probably didn't hear about it, so that's why they act the way they do. Like in elementary school, we learned about communism and how it was bad, but it seems like these kids these days did not. It's like, did they skip the communism part when you were in school? You piece of shit, you little shit. Is that what it is? Like, is that all it is? That's what it seems like. So you want to move to Russia, you want to move to the USSR, you like communism, you want everything to be the same. I should get a fucking haircut, So you didn't do that, it doesn't make sense. Like, that's rhetorical. Like, it makes sense, but it should not make sense to other people. Like, the fact that it is allowed by other people is one of two things. It's like, one, it makes sense to them, but they're just allowing it, or two, it doesn't make sense, and so they're fine with it. Like, ignorance is bliss, or they're a part of it and they're just being manipulated. I'm not saying everyone is out to get anyone, or someone's out to get anyone, or anyone's out to get me, anything like that, but that's just what it seems like. I'd like to talk about it more, but it might make more sense with more written stuff, so I'm gonna write some more stuff, add a couple chapters to the manuscript, complete it, hopefully sell that book for 20-30 bucks each once it's printed. Then I have to finish writing the next project. I just want it to all be done so I can do something else already. Go outside, take like a walk in fresh air, take a shower or something, like do that. Like, I want to drive a car with the windows down and catch a breeze that way. So I think it's stuff like that. stuff with the education system going on and whatnot. So that's mostly what I wanted to talk about. I think there's some more, but kind of ran out of time. So try to keep you updated